Hi, my name is Melanie Dizon. I'm the Director of Education with Davis Phinney Foundation, and today I'm here with Dr. Ron Small. Hi, Ron. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good, great. So we're going to be talking about his journey with Parkinson's, the diagnosis, what it's been like for him to live with it since he was officially diagnosed. And we're going to get into a lot of different things that we think is going to be super helpful to you. So Dr. Small, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, where you live, all that kind of stuff?
Okay, my name is Dr. Ron Small, and I live here in Stockton, California, and I've been here almost my entire life, other than through the time I went to college. But what I did professionally was that I was an educator for 32 years, and I started out teaching high school economics and government in Stockton. I started at Lincoln High School, and I taught there for 13 years. Then I went on to be an administrator in another school district, and I became assistant principal, and then I became a principal, and then I ended up being an assistant superintendent of human resources. Some of the things that I like to do are go to church, exercise, and have family gatherings. And the irony of it all is that since we've had COVID-19, I haven't been able to do much of those things. So, everything that I was doing prior to my diagnosis were those things. And now, after my diagnosis in this last 4 months, I haven't been able to do much of them.
Right. So speaking of your diagnosis, can you talk a little bit about what your diagnosis process was like? When did you first start experiencing symptoms of Parkinson's, and then how did you finally get to that eventual diagnosis?
Well, the first time that I experienced something that I later went back and thought about is that I was at a faculty meeting. I was given a faculty meeting at my school, and I started to notice my speech was slurring, as well as I was having difficulties connecting words to the choosing the right words. And so it went on for a minute, and I said, well, things are starting to change in my life, but I didn't have any idea of what they were related to. So I just kind of thought, well, that may be part of the aging process, getting older and just not being where I used to be. So I was kind of concerned about it, but not totally worried about it. So I went ahead and retired, and I just kind of started doing things for the community and just started to notice other changes in my body. Well, the first time that I had some diagnosis was that in 2016, I was diagnosed with restless leg syndrome. I had experienced twitching in my legs. Also, I was trying to get comfortable in my bed while I was resting. So I was noticing those kind of situations. And I thought, well, I need to go to the doctor and find out what was going on. So when I went to the doctor, they said it was restless leg syndrome. They prescribed me gabapentin for that. And so as I continued to progress with this Parkinson's, it got worse. And so I went back to another neurologist the second time, and they diagnosed it as peripheral neuropathy, and that was in 2018. And so in 2018, they prescribed me nortriptyline. And so I went off thinking, well, this is going to work and stop the pain that I was experiencing in my legs. So that was pretty much the first two diagnoses that I had with Parkinson's. So the third diagnosis, I went to a doctor that was referred to me by another doctor in my church. I went up to my doctor in the church and I asked him, and I shared with him the experiences that I would have with my legs. And he referred me to an African-American neurologist. And I thought that was quite interesting because, sometimes we look at doctors and notice that when we have the same ethnic background, there's a common bond with them in terms of saying, well, we can trust them a whole lot more sometimes, because what we typically associate with is that we had a common past experience. Usually when you meet an African-American doctor with someone else, they usually had similar life experiences, living in poverty, growing up in a ghetto or something like that, and all of a sudden you start realizing that they have your interests at hand. So it was warm and welcoming to be able to have a doctor, the doctor that I currently have now. And so that diagnosis came in March of 2019.
Great. So what were some of the first things that you did after you received the Parkinson's diagnosis? And what were some things that, you know, had changed in your life pre-Parkinson's? What did you do? And post-Parkinson's, what are you doing now?
Well, pre-Parkinson's, I think my life was pretty routine. You know, I would work out, go to the gym and do that. I'm a gym rat because I'm a former athlete.
What did you play?
I played in 1977 through 1980 at the University of Utah. I received a football scholarship to go to the University of Utah, played there. And then when I finished my undergraduate work, I went on to graduate school there at the university. And so I was always what we call a gym rat, somebody who was always in the gym, enjoyed lifting weights and so on. So I did a lot of that and stayed in shape pretty much my entire life. So that was one of the benefits that I have currently, you know, because I enjoy working out quite a bit. So that was important to me to continue. What I do now is pretty much, again, what I did prior to um, Parkinson's, being diagnosed with Parkinson's. I still go to the gym. I'm a member of Rock Steady Boxing now, which was something that was recommended to me. And so I do that twice a week. And it's really been beneficial. I know that there was a breakdown when all of the gyms and the facilities were closed up by the government in terms of COVID-19. I wasn't able to do what I did then. So I had about a 4-month layoff. The gym that is behind my house right now is a gym, 24-hour fitness, that has been closed for 4 months. So I'm not able to go there. So a lot of the things that I was doing pre-Parkinson's, I'm trying to get back to doing those things because they're very important to me. I know that church, we have such a large church that we couldn't open up. So we still haven't opened up. It's been about 4 months since I've last been to church. We're doing video streaming our services on Sundays and any other day throughout the week. But I'm not able to do that. So that's kind of a tough situation, not being able to fellowship with the rest of the congregation.
Right.
And then, you know, those are some of the things that I'm not able to do. Family and friends, I'm not able to do that because we're sheltering in place here and we're trying to follow social distancing to the max. So we don't have a lot of friends coming by or, you know, going out and doing things with people. So it's kind of been a real situation where I've been on lockdown pretty much.
Yeah.
For 4 months.
So had you gotten involved in any Parkinson's groups?
Oh yeah, very much so. I think Rock Steady Boxing is pretty much a big piece of my life because, you know, we've been working out for almost a year since I was first diagnosed. Was one of the first things that I did was sign up for Rock Steady Boxing because, you know, I knew it would be beneficial for me in slowing down to the progression of Parkinson's. And so I signed up for that. And so we got real close with the people there. You know, it was just amazing how much you learn because I'm one of the younger members of the Rock Steady Boxing group. And so I could see, you know, a lot of what people were going through that were in different stages of Parkinson's than I am. So, you know, it's been real beneficial. There's another group in Stockton called Parkies. You know, it's O'Connor Woods is a retirement home center. And they have a social group that called the Parkies, and they get people together once a month and they talk about Parkinson's and provide information to the members that are in that facility. So I've been able to do that early on, but again, you know, as COVID-19 has it, we're not able to meet. So that's been a disappointment. So those are some of the social outlets that I've been able to get involved with. But, again, we're not able to continue with it as of this time.
So when you were going through the diagnosis process, what do you think was going on as to why, the diagnosis took so long? You had all of these symptoms that were very sort of Parkinsonisms. What do you think took so long? And are you currently taking levodopa? Are you taking any medication? And is it helping with like your restless leg and some of the other issues you were having?
Well, I wondered about that because, I was with two neurologists, the one that diagnosed me with restless leg syndrome. And then I was with the second neurologist who diagnosed me with peripheral neuropathy. And I was wondering, why they didn't diagnose me first correctly. But when I went to the third doctor, I saw the things that she did versus the things that they did, and they were totally different things. They didn't necessarily do the same assessment to determine Parkinson's as the last doctor did. So I didn't get a visual. I mean, they didn't look at what I thought was important, how I walked. That was one assessment that the third doctor used. She said, I want you to walk. And she said, walk up and down the hall 4 or 5 times and let me look at you walk. So, I'm walking, I'm thinking, well, what is she observing? And she was observing my gait. She was observing whether my shoulders were swinging correctly. And she shared with me after she did that, this is what I was looking for. And you are rigid, your arms don't swing, your gait is kind of off slightly. So that was some of the diagnosis, the steps, the procedures that she took that I didn't see in the first 2 examinations. She also sat me down. She said, okay, I'm going to have you play this game where all I want you to do is touch the tips of your fingers and do it rapidly as possible. Okay, I'm sitting there thinking, well, okay, what does that got to do with Parkinson's? But, you start small motor movements, you start realizing, yeah, that was important. And she saw that. She told me also to turn my hands over and back, over and back, over and back, and do it as fast as possible. So she was real thorough in her assessment of me, and I didn't go through any of those kinds of assessments with the first 2 neurologists. Then she sent me, she wasn't sure, but she had an idea that it did look like Parkinson's. And so she said, well, I want you to take an MRI. She sent me to get an MRI because she said, well, sometimes it might be a mini stroke that you have and maybe not Parkinson's. I'm not sure at this time, but I want you to take these other tests. So she sent me to get an MRI. I got the MRI. It came back negative on the stroke side. She said, well, since we could rule out strokes, it might be something else that I want to take another look at. So she sent me to get a DAT scan in Sacramento. I had to drive to Sacramento to get that DAT scan. And it came back and she said, well, I can now confirm that you now have Parkinson's. So this third diagnosis was so thorough and complete. It was like, okay, but I didn't see any of that in the first 2. It was, here's what we think it is. Whatever assessments they took, they gave me a prescription for it. And I walked out of the office thinking, okay, maybe this will work. Well, it didn't work. It got progressively worse. So the person that I went to the second time said, it's peripheral neuropathy. I'm gonna give you nortriptyline, you take that. So I said, I took it, and then I said, well, that's not working either. And so I got that other referral from a doctor at my church, and he sent me to my current neurologist now, and I'm just excited about having her as my neurologist.
Yeah, is she a movement disorder specialist or just a general neurologist?
It was so thorough. It was just
That's great.
And there are times that I go and have to visit, and I always think that I can control the outcome of the test. So, I think, well, she's going to ask me to walk. So I get my best walk on, my arms swinging, my legs, my gait is moving perfectly. And she says, well, we're not testing for that today. We have this memory test that we have to take. And I'm sitting there saying, oh my Lord. So she's so good. She keeps me off balance with what is she's going to assess. So I can never really guess at what I'm going to do when I get there.
Right. So is she right in Stockton, or do you have to travel far?
In Stockton, I do Kaiser, Stockton.
That's great.
And so my whole wellness team is out of Kaiser. And that is one of the great benefits that I have being with Kaiser.
Okay. So tell me, who is on your wellness team?
Well, my primary doctor is on my wellness team, so he takes care of all the other issues that come up surrounding my treatment for Parkinson's and other life issues. So that's one. I have a movement disorder specialist in Sacramento. So when things get real difficult with those parts of my body that I need to have somebody else look at, I do have that person in place at this time. And it was one of the first things that I did when I first got diagnosed with Parkinson's, is that I went out and put together this wellness team, because I knew it was very important for all components that I'd be dealing with Parkinson's. So I have a movement specialist. I have a speech therapist, because, you know, a lot of times you have to deal with that speech, you know, slurred speech, being able to make sounds and keep the muscles doing what they're supposed to do. So I have that, and I go there probably every 2 months, you know, and I go through sound, you know, tests and things like that. And I have that. I have a physical therapist. I have both a physical therapist at Kaiser, and then I have a private physical therapist that comes to my house and stretches me out. And we do a lot of wonderful things together, because, you know, as I was aging, before I even was diagnosed with Parkinson's, they were talking about flexibility and range of motion. That's what he was working on all this time. So I found it so beneficial having to deal with Parkinson's. So they were doing similar things prior to my diagnosis that I'm currently doing now. So that's a big benefit to have him on my staff, you know, as part of my wellness team. But my care partner, my wife, is major number one.
Great.
She takes care of me. She takes care of the diet, the depression, and all, all that other stuff.
So what, speaking of your wife, what was it like to share your diagnosis with your friends and family?
Well, the interesting thing is that my kids, let me talk about my siblings, because my siblings are a little different. They kind of accepted it. And the reason why they accepted it is that my older sister had Parkinson's. I'm the second person in my family who has contracted Parkinson's. And so that was something that they kind of looked at early on. Even before I was diagnosed, my younger sister would always tell me that you look like her older sister, my older sister. And I said, nah, you just must be kidding. You're just saying, I'm just kidding. No, I was making all the excuses in the world. But she was always saying, you're so rigid, you're stiff, you don't do this, you don't do that. I didn't really know that that was part of Parkinson's in the beginning. But as I got that diagnosis, they were more receptive, because they had been through those experiences with my sister, seeing the progression of Parkinson's from the time she got it, because she had it early onset Parkinson's. So she had it when she was about 45 years old, and she died at age 64. And we went through the whole experience of Parkinson's with her. My kids, they were okay with it. You know, we still have to have conversations about it from time to time, because anything that happens, any significant change in, you know, my body or my depression or any of those kinds of things that happen from time to time, they get concerned, because sometimes, you know, younger kids think that when you get a disease like that, it's a death sentence. And I've shared with them, it's not a death sentence. Dad is okay. Dad is going to be fine. As long as dad does what he's supposed to be doing, he can live a quite healthy life. So that's kind of important that I convey that message to them so that they're not overly worried about what's going on. They do see changes though.
How old are your kids?
Oh gosh, the oldest is 43 and the youngest just turned 33.
All right. Yeah. So do they live nearby?
Yeah, I have one that lives currently. I have two daughters and two sons.
Oh,
My daughter that is part of the family. So they're all, the one daughter lives here in my house now. She came back home. So she lives with us. But my two sons and my other daughter live in, one daughter lives in Oakland
okay.
and the rest of them live in Stockton.
Nice. That's nice to have family close.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And so I have so many grandkids. That's amazing. I have 9 grandkids.
Oh, wow. What do they think about it? Do they know?
Not really. They're kind of little, they're small, and they really haven't had a lot of discussion with it. The older ones do, but the younger ones really don't notice anything different. They're always playing with their cell phones. So they're not looking at me, that's for sure.
Yeah. So what would you say are have been the biggest challenges aside from COVID? I mean, that is just a natural, unfortunate situation and timing for all the work that you were doing to try to live well. But what are some of the biggest challenges that you've had since, getting Parkinson's? And
well, the biggest challenge and the one that I have the most difficulty with is my cognitive issues. That to me is frightening as opposed to the physical side, because I'm able to deal with the physical side because I know my body and I know what it's going through and I can make the adjustment there. But the cognitive side is, well, my memory is being impacted. I don't remember much as well as I used to. So it's kind of like when I first started to lose my memory, I was asking myself, is that due to aging? Is that due to dementia? Is that due to Alzheimer's? Is that, all of those categories, you try to find which box that fits in. And so, again, it's not something that you can really control for. You have to deal with it. Because the speech part, I have problems with my speech at times. I run my words into each other, slur speech. Sometimes I forget what I'm thinking about. I'm searching for words. So that's the problem. And what it creates is this real high level of anxiety. And what I'm doing right now is this, that I have to force myself to get up and speak publicly because of the anxiety that it creates for me. Because I'm always concerned about, what am I going to say? Am I going to forget what I'm going to say? Do I need to write it down? Do I need to do something so that I can retain it and recall it when I need it? And so that's been the biggest challenge that I've had, because my career as an educator has always been able to speak in front of people comfortably. And so when that meeting that I had in 2012 with the faculty, it was kind of like, wait a minute, I'm a little nervous. This is something different for me. As I continued to move down, the issues that I had to address each time I was asked to speak, that initial fear, that initial anxiety. So I'd have to deal with those kinds of things before I'm comfortable enough to get up and speak in front of public. And sometimes I'll decline. I had to debate whether I was going to do this today versus text you a message and say, hey, I'm out of here. It's not happening.
Yeah, well, I can't tell that you have any anxiety at all, so you hide it well.
Well,
I was a teacher too, and they always used to say, teaching is 95% performing, right? So you're doing a great job.
But I have to press, and I have to look at all the things that I need to do, and some of the strategies that I use to overcome that, I have to write things down. Something that I used to just walk around and off the top of my head spit it out and do what I had to do. But now I have to write things down, which is an important thing because it saves me about 4 or 5 trips to the store.
That's good. So, okay, speaking of silver linings, what are some of the silver linings that you've noticed from living with Parkinson's?
Well, that I'm not in this thing alone. I mean, I think a whole new world has opened up in terms of relationships that I've experienced new people, people of different backgrounds and races and colors. I mean, it's amazing that we all have this common bond that has brought us together because of Parkinson's. No other reason on the planet we have come together other than to deal with this. So there's a lot of issues that we used to kind of deal with, you know, racially. They don't necessarily exist because we all got Parkinson's. We're all trying to do and live well. And so we kind of support each other in what we do.
Okay, so my favorite question. Imagine you're standing on a stage and thousands of people with Parkinson's are sitting in the audience, and you have the chance to tell them three things that and they've been newly diagnosed with Parkinson's. So you have three things to tell them that you want to make sure they know as they start this journey. What would you say?
First of all, I would say being diagnosed with Parkinson is not a death sentence. And I think that really is important because I think the first time, and just like for me, I had to deal and grapple with that. How long was I going to live? What kind of lifestyle was I going to have to deal with through these progressions that I'm probably going to be going through? And so what happened is that once I kind of processed it and said it's not a death sentence, that people can live a long life with Parkinson, then let me start living with this disease. Let me start living and not dying with this disease, because I've seen people, and as a matter of fact, I have a father-in-law who is living in Ohio who has Parkinson's, and he was diagnosed last year. He's about 75 years old, and he has progressed to the point where he's almost bedridden. He wasn't athletic. He wasn't somebody who would work out, go to the gym. He's just taking his medicine, and you can see his progressions go so quickly to where he's now he sleeps quite a bit. He's not mobile as much as he used to be. So you can see that in terms of making the comparisons between him and I, but you know, mentally, you have to accept and embrace what you got and live out what needs to happen in order to live a quality life. The other thing is you have to live life to the fullest. You still have to do those things that you used to do before you got Parkinson's. For me, it's like going to the gym. I love being in the gym, and I lift weights, I run on the treadmill. I do a lot of things that I was doing prior to Parkinson's still, because with the literature and with the data out there about exercise and how important that is, that was right up my alley. You know, it was important that I can continue to do something to fight this progression of Parkinson's that I was doing prior to it. And I've noticed that it really is more difficult for people who are not athletic to embrace it, because they didn't embrace it as a lifestyle. So now it's something new, something hard, something difficult that they have to do to have a healthy lifestyle. And so, you know, when I go to my rock steady boxing, you know, I'm applauding all of those people that are in there with me. It's important because I don't know what life experience they had athletically, but I try to be supportive of them. I gauge what I do based upon what I see that I may have to go through. So I see a lot of things that people are going through that are worse than I'm going through, and it motivates me. So the third thing is that there are so many people that have things that they have to live with that are motivated, because I don't have to go through those. I have to go through what I have, and I know what I need to do. I need to exercise. I need to take my medication. I have to have a strong spiritual life, and that's what I do. I rely on those three things for me. So putting them all together, it's kind of looking at how do I maximize my life with this disease.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it sounds like you have gotten to a point where you do accept your disease, and you have really put things in place to make sure that you're living well. And hopefully you will be able to get out into the world and connect with your people at church again in person, and people at your Rock Steady Boxing and at the gym and all of that. So I really hope that that becomes happens sooner rather than later.
Well, it's starting to open it back up. We just have to be patient, and that's the one thing, because they talk about underlying conditions, and that's one of those underlying conditions that we have to deal with. So we have to be careful that we avoid those contacts and maintain social distance. But we also have to recognize that we have an underlying condition that is, creating some other concerns in areas of our lives. So that's basically what I try to do. I try to balance those two things and not just get so overwhelmed that, because the bottom line, you can get in a depressed condition that you're now dealing with something different. So, it's a balance of all of those things.
Well, thank you, Dr. Small, for being with us today. It was really a pleasure to talk to you, and hopefully we'll hear from you again soon.
Okay, great. Thank you.